Are the Blazers the worst team in the NBA? Or are they going to shock a lot of people this year? Welcome back to my channel. I hope you guys are having a great day so far. Today, I'll be answering the question, are the Blazers the worst team in the NBA? To do so, I'll be breaking down the Blazers roster and comparing it to other teams around the NBA to answer the question. Before the video gets started, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you really enjoyed the video. It would really mean a lot as we're nearing 1,000 subscribers. But with that out of the way, let's get right into the video. Now, I need to preface this video by saying that this is assuming the Blazers don't make any more major moves before the start of the season, and they go into the year with both Jeremy Grant and Anthony Simons still on the roster. Of course, if you're watching this video after one of those players is traded, then please take that into account. And so first, we need to talk about how the Blazers exactly became one of the bottom teams in the NBA. As it felt like for quite some time, the Blazers were one of the better teams in the NBA and actually were making the playoffs pretty consistently. Now, the last 3 seasons have been absolutely brutal for Portland fans, but what about before that? The Blazers made the playoffs for 8 straight seasons from 2014 until 2021. In 2022, Damian Lillard was hurt and was sat half of the season with a core surgery, and so they ended up landing the number 7 overall pick and drafting Shaedon Sharpe. And in 2023, they were actually surprisingly close to making the playoffs, but towards the end of the season, they decided to tank instead of shooting for a playoff run in hopes of getting Victor Wembanyama. Now, of course, that didn't end up working out for the Portland Trailblazers or Blazer fans in general, but they did end up moving up to number 3 overall, where they decided to draft Scoot Henderson. And that seemed to be the straw that broke the camel's back, as not too much longer after the draft is when Damian Lillard requested a trade out of Portland. And so this past season, the 2023 and 2024 season, was the Blazers' first full official year as a rebuilding team, where they had 12 out of their 15 players either being in their first or second season with the team. And with that, the Blazers finished the season with a record of 21-61 and finished the season as the worst team in the Western Conference. And so that brings me to the topic of the video: will the Blazers be the worst, not just one of the worst, but the single worst team in the NBA this year? And my answer to that is no. Now, right off the bat, I want to say that you have a few teams that, aside from horrendous injury luck, I could definitely see being worse than Portland this year. You have the Brooklyn Nets, who decided to go full rebuild mode this offseason, just decided to rip off the band-aid, trade Mikal Bridges to New York, and are embracing the rebuild. And I don't think anyone would be surprised if they're the worst team in the Eastern Conference this year. Then you also have the Washington Wizards, who are a kind of weird rebuilding team, as they just traded PNWDev to your Blazers for Malcolm Brogdon and picks. But they also have players like Jordan Poole, Kyle Kuzma, and recently acquired Jonas Valanciunas. And so it'll be interesting to see just how much and how competitive they are this year versus how much they try to tank and lose games. Regardless though, I think your Blazers will definitely be better than them. And then you have some teams like the Pistons, the Utah Jazz, and the San Antonio Spurs, who, while they have a player that is better than anyone on the Blazers roster, I don't think their teams have as much depth as your Blazers do. And that's the problem, right? With teams like the Pistons or the Jazz or even the Spurs, while they have some sort of star players, whether it's Victor Wembanyama or Lauri Markkanen or Cade Cunningham, I believe they still have such large holes in their roster that I don't think they'll be willing to compete, and I think your Blazers will be able to surprise a lot of people and be better than them. Now, no, I'm not saying that the Blazers are going to be a play-in team or a playoff team or whatever this season, but I wouldn't be surprised if they were an 11th seed maybe, or 12th seed as opposed to the 15th seed in the West. And you might ask why I seem so optimistic, right? Is it just bias, or do I actually have some thought behind this take? As I mentioned before, I believe the Blazers have a much more well-rounded team than some of the other ones I mentioned, where they have shooting, they have defense, they have some playmaking, they have depth, and they have players who are just ready to make an overall jump this year. You have Scoot Henderson, who ended off the season averaging nearly 19 points in his last 10 games last season, so I think he's really ready to come in his year 2 and make a huge jump. And then you have guys like Shaedon Sharpe, who had 5, 6, 7 game stretches last season where he was looking like a star, averaging nearly 26 points and 7 rebounds. The Blazers have also acquired PNWDev to slide in at that starting small forward spot, and the Blazers have a lot of defensive upgrades that they made this season in acquiring Donovan Clingan and essentially replacing Moses Brown for him. As well as I think it's possible that we'll see a nice year 2 jump from Toumani Camara on defense as well. And then not to mention how DeAndre Ayton finished off his last season having multiple games of averaging 30 and 10. It wouldn't shock me if he came into this season with kind of a chip on his shoulder, not wanting to lose that starting spot, and puts up good numbers. And so you may be asking me, if the Blazers are only going to be one of the worst teams but not the worst team, how many wins would I predict them to have? I'll be very interested to see what the betting line is as we get closer to the season, but overall I would guess that the Blazers land somewhere between that 24 to 28 wins depending on health. The problem is that the West is very talent filled, and so naturally we're going to be playing a lot more of those teams more often than the East. And so I could see at least 2 to 3 teams in the East finishing with worse records than the Blazers, but the Blazers still being one of the 1 or 2 worst teams in the Western Conference. And that's something that I think a lot of fans overlook, is the fact that the Blazers are going to be playing teams in the West like the Clippers, the Lakers, the Thunder, the Timberwolves a lot more than they're going to be playing some of those Eastern Conference teams. And so there's going to be a lot less games that I could see being close or where the Blazers could try and pull out a win. But even this last season with the talent-filled West, we saw a lot of games where the Blazers were either close to beating a top-end team or even coming out on top over teams like the Milwaukee Bucks. And so while the Blazers, as I said before, have a solid chance of being better than the worst team in the West, I just don't see them being better than the 11th seed, even when you consider injuries and trades and stuff like that from other teams. And so overall, no, I don't think that the Blazers are the worst team in the NBA like some people seem to paint them out to be, but I do think they are one of the worst teams in the NBA and will probably end up finishing amongst the top 5 worst teams overall this year. Which, if we see good progress from Scoot Henderson and Shaedon Sharpe and a nice rookie year from Donovan Clingan, I'd be totally fine finishing amongst the bottom ranks of the Western Conference and hopefully having one of the top 5 chances of landing Cooper Flagg in next year's draft. And so where do you think that the Blazers land at the end of the season? How many wins do you realistically see them having, assuming that no big trades or injuries happen prior to the start of the season? That's all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. I'll make sure to put my Cooper Flagg video up on screen if you want to go see how I think that would impact the Blazers. And don't forget to subscribe on your way out of here. And with that said, that's all I have for you guys. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and until next time, I'll see you later.